The guests whispered behind their hands as the bride sat silently in her wheelchair, her trembling fingers clutching the edge of her faded wedding dress. The ceremony had already started, yet the groom was nowhere to be seen. The murmurs grew louder, slicing through her heart like knives. Then came the message everyone dreaded to hear: he's not coming. A man she loved, the one who had promised to love her no matter what, had left her humiliated in front of hundreds, simply because she could no longer walk. If you believe that kindness and second chances can still change lives, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, because today's story will remind you that love, when real, doesn't need perfection to be beautiful. Her name was Anya Fernandez, a 28-year-old teacher from a small town on the outskirts of Goa. Before the accident, Anya had been the kind of woman everyone admired: graceful, cheerful, and full of life. Her laughter could light up a room, and her compassion had once turned even the hardest student into a believer in goodness. But fate has a strange way of testing the kindest souls. 2 years before her wedding day, a speeding truck had hit her motorcycle. She survived, but her legs didn't. The world she once knew shrank overnight. Friends disappeared one by one. The school where she taught replaced her without hesitation. Even her fiancé, Rishabh, the man she had loved for 5 long years, began to fade from her life, first emotionally, then physically. Yet she held on to hope. She thought love would overcome her disability. She was wrong. On her wedding day, she sat before the mirror, her mother's trembling hands adjusting her dupatta. Her father, quiet and pale, tried to smile. "He will come, Beta," he whispered, but deep down, everyone knew the truth. When the call came, it was short. Rishabh's family had decided their son couldn't live with a burden. He wasn't coming. The guests began to leave, whispering pity and shame. Anya's mother wept silently. Her father stood still, unable to speak, while photographers quietly packed up their equipment. But Anya just sat there, numb, her eyes staring into the void. She didn't cry, not that day. Her tears had dried months ago. That night she sat on the porch, watching the rain fall on the empty street, feeling like the world had ended. But fate wasn't done with her story yet. The next morning, a small boy stood at her gate, holding a drenched bouquet of wildflowers. "Are you Miss Anya?" he asked shyly. "My papa told me to give you these." Behind him stood a tall man in a plain white shirt, holding an umbrella. His name was Arnav Mehta, a 35-year-old single father who had just moved into the neighborhood. His wife had died 3 years earlier, leaving him to raise their son, Ishan, alone. Anya blinked in surprise. She didn't know either of them. Arnav smiled gently and said, "I'm sorry to intrude. My son saw the decorations yesterday and wanted to wish you a happy wedding, but we heard what happened. We thought you might need a friend today." Those words, "a friend today," broke through the silence that had gripped her heart. She nodded faintly, and for the first time in months, someone sat beside her without pity. Arnav didn't speak much. He just sat quietly, sharing the silence. Ishan kept placing little flowers on her lap, one by one, saying, "These are happy flowers. They make sad people smile." Over the next few weeks, Arnav and Ishan kept visiting, sometimes with food, sometimes just to talk. Arnav was a mechanic by trade, rough hands, kind eyes, and a voice that carried both sorrow and strength. He never treated Anya like she was broken. He would tell her stories about his late wife and how he was still learning to cook noodles without burning them. Ishan, mischievous and innocent, often made her laugh again, something she hadn't done in months. Slowly, Anya's world began to regain color. She started teaching children from her porch for free, mostly kids from the neighborhood who couldn't afford school. Arnav fixed her old wheelchair without her asking. He even built a small ramp leading to her gate so she could move around easily. "Independence isn't charity," he said once, "it's respect." One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the mango trees, Arnav found her painting by the veranda. She had been sketching before her accident, but had given it up. Now her hands moved again with gentle grace. Arnav watched quietly before saying, "You're still creating beauty, Anya. You just changed the canvas." But as rumors spread small, town tongues started wagging again. Some said Arnav was only helping her out of pity. Others mocked him for wasting time on a crippled woman. Anya overheard some of it, and the pain returned. She distanced herself, fearing she was ruining his reputation. When Arnav came to visit, she avoided him, pretending to be busy. Finally, one evening, he confronted her. "Why are you shutting us out?" he asked softly. She looked away. "Because people are cruel. They're saying things about you because of me. I can't let Ishan suffer for my sake." Arnav knelt before her wheelchair, his eyes steady. "Anya, people talked when I chose to raise Ishan alone. They talked when I cried at my wife's funeral. Let them talk again. They'll stop when they see what love really means." But she still wasn't convinced. That night she cried again, feeling trapped between gratitude and fear. The next morning she woke up to chaos outside her gate. Ishan was missing. The little boy had wandered off trying to bring her flowers from the market. A frantic search began across the town. Arnav's face was pale with terror. Anya, though paralyzed, refused to sit still. She called neighbors, mobilized help, and guided everyone with calm determination. Hours passed before they found Ishan near the riverbank, scared but safe. When Arnav saw her cradling Ishan in her arms, comforting him despite her own pain, he broke down. "You brought my son back to me," he whispered, "and you still think you're less than anyone else." Days later, he returned, this time, not just with flowers. He brought a ring. It wasn't new or shiny. It was his late wife's ring. "She would have wanted me to give this to someone who knows the meaning of love," he said. "Anya, will you let me stand beside you, not out of pity, but out of choice?" The world around her blurred. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not from pain. They were from a feeling she thought she'd lost forever: hope. "Arnav," she whispered, "I can't walk." He smiled gently. "Then I'll walk for both of us." Their wedding wasn't grand. It took place under the same mango tree where Ishan once gave her flowers. Only a handful of neighbors attended, and for the first time Anya's parents smiled with peace. When Arnav placed the ring on her finger, there were no whispers, only quiet awe. Ishan held her hand proudly, saying, "See, Papa told you, happy flowers work." Months later, Anya's small porch school turned into a community center, funded partly by Arnav's earnings and partly by locals who were inspired by her courage. Children who once had no place to study now came running every morning. Arnav would often fix broken chairs or make snacks for the kids while Anya taught. Their home became a beacon of kindness in a world too quick to judge. One sunny afternoon, Anya sat watching the children play when she noticed a familiar face standing at the gate, her former fiancé, Rishabh. He looked older, thinner, his eyes heavy with guilt. "Anya," he said quietly, "I heard about everything. I'm sorry, I was a coward." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled softly. "You were afraid of losing your comfort, but I found my strength. I hope you find yours too." And with that, she turned her wheelchair toward Arnav and Ishan, who were waiting for her under the mango tree. The past no longer had any power over her. From that day on, whenever people in the town spoke of her, they didn't call her the poor paralyzed girl. They called her the woman who taught them what real love looks like. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, because every act of compassion can rewrite someone's destiny. And before this story ends, I have one special request. Comment below and tell us what you believe is the truest form of love. Is it perfection or acceptance? Under the warm daylight, as laughter echoed across the courtyard, Anya looked at her husband and son, her heart full and eyes shining. She had once thought her life had ended, but sometimes life begins exactly where you think it's over.